On the last day of summer vacation, the Tibetan herder Woeser Dawa in the Indian-controlled Kashmir region took his eldest son up the mountain to tend to a herd of goats. Tomorrow, the children will return to boarding school. There is not much family time left. Dolma is located at the border of China and India at an altitude of 3,500 meters. The Indus River flows from the south of the village. The grassland on the south bank of the Indus River is an ideal summer pasture. But after Woeser Dawa arrives here, he continues to lead his herd further up the mountain. If we pull the camera lens up, we can see a long, low wall on the open grassland.
The local Indians built this wall. And it's to keep people from getting in. I must say, it's to keep the Tibetan people from getting in. You can clearly see the difference. You know, it's highly vegetated with the protected places, and it's very dry outside. There's nothing there, it's just a mountain. They just get a rock or they just get a stone, and they make a sign, nothing there to prove that that's his land. But if the Tibetan people doesn't obey that, then they get in trouble.
The day at Woeser Dawa's home begins with milking the goats. The couple works together as one blocks the opening of the pen from the goats that are not producing milk, and the other uses his experienced eye to spot the goats that are. Then the wife Dolma uses wool ropes to tie dozens of goats together. This technique has been used by Tibetans for centuries. But the couple does not intend to pass the skill on to their 3 sons.
Ta chung sona ta win thola ta wi lobjong la chanya ga doba ya ta jik da ni mayo sona ta khora cho sona te dokba rang ge di je ga doba ya sama ta jik thubi ma ni thubi ma ta dang thi sang tin du tu ni sama chi lobjong ya di ra wa ya lo to se ne kho sama to ma ya.
Today is the first day of school. Tsering Dolma takes out the new shoes for the children. She helps the youngest put on his shoes. In a few minutes, the 3 sons will return to their boarding school in the city of Leh. The family won't be reunited again until winter vacation, which is a few months away. Indian-controlled Kashmir is the largest pasture for exiled Tibetans. Woeser Dawa and Tsering Dolma are second-generation exiled Tibetans born here. As more and more herders choose to settle down in the city, the couple is also starting to feel that the nomadic lifestyle may be unsustainable.
부정은 신유 등두 신유와 등두 신유와디 장당라 이게 갈수 없다 배주당 모두 봐 야나 인터넷 단지 여러 번 디주 장당은 요말에 가실라 폰 단다에 두고 말에 폰 요말에 팀 무슨서 내가 데리지 가는 아주 럽종 유니크 미디 안지 갈수 없다 다 갈래갈래지 로바디 갈수 없다 뇽도 안저기 로잡세네 민도다 리슝 단디주 개침벌 선선디
North of Choglumsar is the city of Leh. 70% of Tibetan exiles in Indian-controlled Kashmir live in Sonam Ling, the Tibetan resettlement area in the south of Leh. There are about 5,000 of them. In over half a century, 12 refugee camps have been built here. The earliest camp number 1 was built in the early 1960s. Nawang Tenzin, who originally lived in Anjari prefecture of Tibet, herded hundreds of cattle and goats to Kashmir, but was forced to end his nomadic herding life 5 years later and moved to Leh.
Dibatu changda tere rama yore di tusuru rama yorwa dok changorwa di tere di una rama saman ka bab namda saman nam ka ba ri seso de samashi sure rama de ngado ji chagda men de di jawan me seso de
이 독보 지도기 좋아하게다 줘라.
알아
더 좋아하게다 줘라.
알아
거기 야가 누수.
dokbat ga de dokbat simjen tinje gla song pa ngato song kon du ya lega yo ma
내 내가 가르치기도.
다 de lega da sajing to ning jang segura sale to le jang segura sa to wa de ko ko de sa ko de to wa chi ba te ko de yang chi tang ko de chi ko lega
어머들라 가도 가도 변에 막 가도 레.
그 설레미도.
맞아 변에 말레니 와. 당부 이게 똑바로.
네.
이 말레라.
그래.
뒤에 캠델 시차래.
네.
네 디kem dur ga shi
아니 로쇼쇼가 내가 가르치.
rama du kore
야.
lukti
룩tis다고. 진짜 그래. 다 룩디 찍게매 시치도 된다게 예지.
또단다디 변쇼네 잡소로 주라고 그래.
ale ya na ma
아무라라고 그래.
amana da ma
라고 말해.
ne ma ngado la ka le sukerwa te ra yo mari ta tanda la ka me ra chi ka me ta te ra yo ma
Paldin Dorji's family were originally herders from Tibet. He now runs a small business in the Tibetan market in the city of Leh.
다 디딩 안저 체 내가 저 아우체 디딩에 보고였다 보고자 안저 통바시 안저 통바시제로 따라루 견도메 당한 상마도메는 페제로루 아 계계구제셔래 계계구제 야 얘기하스주래 아따 십주스 어디리셔 네 땡길로네 히레 다 공가피 남시랑모체 아니 안저 별 짜요네시 갸갈 산담데 단달라다도 짜요마로 짜다 지 공부시요래 안데네 강시우잡 안은 안주 룽발레 디 룽발레 탕아요래 되는 선자라루 니 뇽뇽 로레 뇽뇽뇽 저전 타마델라 자메 저조레 런도 다 이기마 라루 심제 조사된 마용로 안 단당 아저다 기직 마제네 디고 마로 내가 청아 좀 치고 안데 서포트 파데 녀디강 저베강 데 잘라 청아 좀 되는 정데 어딘 정도
디 버송산 당 아주 이제 로버기 레는 네베 제디 슉 차들 강에서 올다 그거는 로버디 그런 지 이내 하는 지고 다 규제 디나네 다 될 로버님 하도에 규제 조디 남시 장무여와 남시 장무라 빠베기 튼제메와 디 중sen직
How to make a living is not a problem confined to Leh, but an issue all Tibetans in exile face. In the 1960s, the Indian economy hadn't taken off, and the first generation of exiled Tibetans lacked modern skills and had very limited choices for making a living.
딱 교부로 두그리 해야지 강게 디시에고로마도 저도 인 가보시라고 말. 아니 망골은 말로 있던데 망골을 야간주 콜라자다 팀 당일디 가도로 가도 돌 이구병이로 손은 장여로 발 토시제 장가정이 정이 답배백이 부고서 장가정이 정이 제 기지 좀 장가지로 발 토납자다 휴이도단 이구마 비독도 말 어디에 제 양고갈래 가서는 그 자디 주에 토시 미니니 디르세 강가 딘데 지거를 보라 도시 거다 나갈 보라 주두전에 미시미도 말
젠데 루체니 돌고와 돌체 딘데 돈에 밀로죠 메교다 딘데 팀마제 주모도 딘데 돈에 시교딘데 망고치 모레 아니 랑가 소살이야 왈 내가 쳐드는 간마스 사드마 루체죠라 딘데 루체 딘데 마 대제 딘데 시교딘데 망고치 모레 다 간다 딘데 통해 쪼고디 딘데 돈데
Dawa Poonki is now the director at Dalek Hospital, the largest hospital for exiled Tibetans in India. He grew up alongside his parents on road construction sites, and then moved to southern India with his parents to participate in the establishment of the first exiled Tibetan settlement.
아니 식나 상마 양 아주 파마조다 다나지 표바신다 섬에 뚝제 식나도 뚝제 막 신가 사지수 강밖에 없었어요. 어딘데 지금 홍수 시절 내제 달로 먹을이야 남시 주고다 갈래 쉬우지 잡죠 제 갈래 쉬우지 요선상 표바도 내가는 가로 쉬우시다 아니 미슝기 칼까 나오는데 두세 뒤는 후다바다 쉬우시고 요선상 아니 또 제도 야고 메워체 남시에서 쉬우시 튀게 좀 쉬우시 다 된데 게베기 표만 뭐 쉬우시 총어래 둔주 둔숨 두시 델리아 지슈니슈 지그슈는 직총어래 예빨라 년 총어래 로숨치 섭디라 디슈구들이야 니 아마 심데다데 체체 아마 나체 야 아마 로직 총어래 아마 로숨 섭들 총어래 제상에 파마도 총어선자 다 먼저 디게 섬으로 보고 숨을 하디 있어봐 내가 교시 차려
신체유도 요 말데 나체유 멜 얘네 나도들 공부다 배먹고들이 명목을 뒤도 콘도로 보라 제 신체단도 팔로 둘레도 전에 신기 따와네 강가파 버다 뒤리 봐도
Nudu Paldin, who was over 80 years old, was only 25 years old when he left Tibet. Having done jobs such as building roads and houses, he was drafted into the army and became a member of the Special Frontier Force. He was sent to the front line during the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971.
누구면가도 매 불달마 자고 준된 개매 이지 오만 생생 조조를 콜레 이지를 대슈리 아니 나도 도메스라 거리 엔 타마르데 다 메게마가게 아니 달레라마 자고로 지까위는 나도 도이티마도 도메스라 그래 다 인도전에 에지 오마다 나도 공우리 참박한 대생들이 군이 따라서 페이지에 군들이야 아니 베게 당도 강에 도도 바 방라트 말에 딘들 당으로 쉬지 인체랑기 까면데 도미도시 도시에도 아니 저거 저기 다 내다는 강에 좀브리 로고 맞은 팅 말이 남의 용요리 강용요지 티스 까티낭도 말 말을 듣는데 강용이 돼요 말이 가가 숙지에 도로 타가가 도를 딘딘질 자가기 몸이 딥도 뒤세버릴 당한도 베데 그 민다 십주 생각 시스템도 심마소 미십시가 매었어요.
Although India-controlled Kashmir is a military-controlled area, Leh is a popular tourist destination. At 4:30 in the morning, the prayers of the mosque can be heard. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the early prayers of Tibetan Buddhism will begin. The Tibetan market in the center of Leh is a must-see for Western tourists. Tibetan wool textiles, especially hand-woven sweaters, carpets, shawls, and blankets, are very popular. But this business only lasts 4 to 5 months a year. In October, Tibetans will have to find another livelihood until the snow melts in May of the following year.
가시 공갈 랑가까도로 잘라 되세요 말아 잘라 저네 고자니 들려요 가시 한 잘라 동가 만도 총야가 군종 만두고로 어디래 가시 총어 동거 잘라서 아니 한 잘라 시대 저선에 뉴뉴차 한남이 총차 진 잘라 된살 디야 딩아도 레지스테인데 이거 커피인 거 대발 미닝가 아니 티슈
Most second-generation Tibetan exiles can speak English. The thriving tourism industry in Leh has brought them new opportunities. However, due to the limitation of their status, Tibetans can only engage in service industries such as retail sales, tour guides, interpreters, and drivers. Income varies with the seasons and is unstable.
야구 중요해. 가연스는 믹스에게 배워 주네. 아니 겨울 무지 가공 시송. 근데 죽고에 왜네. 아니 간술다이디 대비엘디 라게요 말은 간좀 배배에 비찬 명도네. 디나지 간좀 모터 사와신 요거네. 근데 택시 라콜 뭐 다디 요거에 왜네. 아니 디 레지스트레이션 디 대고 지야 돼 간좀 명도요 말은. 종지 레벨 통에 이제 레게 고합다. 뭐부 줘야 되다. 근데 디나 관수 유민의 관수 현재 대수 시행당 라게 요즘 뭐부야 네. 관수 레게 고합다 대수 제라게요 말은. 디 서우세장래 디샤와샤 chop to bye bye see you tomorrow.
In addition to employment, housing is unequal as well. After the economic boom in India, property prices in the remote areas originally allocated to Tibetans, especially the northern mountainous areas, were driven up by tourism. Exiled Tibetans without citizenship cannot own property and therefore cannot benefit from such economic development. Meanwhile, their limited living space is being encroached.
레라 타당보 가서 레오 갑라 나주 비니바 나주 레레 티주 사자탄다 미게 비두 건반두인디 사자 동바저레 모디 가서 때브레 아니 나주 미스 동바 숨주 소랑 숨주 섭데니 지베 티 레와다 아니 가서 리아 이네다 제주 제랑스네네 gem 초메브체 다디니 치스네 다 부서게 부서와기 그래 미페루로 에티길레 톱단 사자 톱단 아요 말 아니 제기비 치스네 미 스페니아 산조트 조비나 티졸로게 사자게 되고 말 어디들.
The resettlement site does not have more land, but the population continues to grow. Some Tibetans began to build houses in the open space on the outskirts of the site, but were met with resistance by local Indians. there was a row of houses in refugee camp number 1 that was knocked down and leveled.
Right in front of Camp 1, there's a big monastery run by local Indian Buddhist institutes. They can claim the land easily. They said, this is our land. And you just came too close, get away. And they blocked everybody. They flattened the places and they said, leave this place open, don't come in. There's no development happening in that place where they've been evicted. Of course, I have no way of proving the evidence, but the articles that I read, through the internet, it did say, there's no documents or there's no legal issues that backs up the story.
The report published in 2016 by the Tibet Justice Center, based in the United States, points to the Central Tibet Administration as the one responsible for the situation of the Tibetans in Leh. According to the report, the Tibetan settlements in Leh had signed a rental agreement with the local government of India in the 1960s, and the land was distributed to about 2,000 exiled Tibetans. However, the CTA did not retain a copy of this rental agreement. Today, land prices in Leh are soaring, and land encroachment is on the rise. Exiled Tibetans who hold neither land ownership nor lease contracts are extremely vulnerable and helpless. From 2010 to 2015, there have been about 500 incidents of encroachment on Tibetan land in Leh.
I think, in 1959, when everything was all agreed upon, they had a very good mutual understanding. And then, there's many decades, the local community doesn't like that.
I heard Ladakhis would often call Tibetans Khampo, meaning wanderers, homeless, no country, nothing. So they would kind of sometimes look down on us.
네, 야갈 기 유미라 투남 지역에 대한 건수초기 다 양내 양도 아니 배바조 남도에 팹도 그래. 다 배바 랑이네 지 되게 크일로 단다지 아니 뇨다서 되니다 되게 시우지요 말이 가있으나 다 아주 밀을 고야 망부차 변조로 약부차 망부차나 아니지 고주망하다 아니 제주사왔다 되게 이거 여러분라 대무선산다 고안주 조와 딕섬마도 매우 선산 지 오늘 이로 신대지는 유민님 제와야 붙이 도스.
The sound of running tap water is the greatest music to the Tibetans' ears living in Sinjali. More than 120 households in the Tibetan community share 4 water taps. On average, water is available every 3 days for 10 hours at a time. This dark-skinned Nepalese youth was hired to help with carrying the water. When water is available, each household needs about 4 to 6 barrels of water. Most of the Tibetans living in Sinjali are the elderly and children. The 61-year-old Tsering Dorji has lived in Sinjali since he was 19. He met his wife here, had children here, and now has grandchildren here as well. For more than 40 years, the living environment of Tibetan community in Sinjali has remained basically unchanged. but the house of Sanjali is gradually deteriorating. The Tibetan area inhabited by Tsering Dorji is located on the outskirts of Shimla, the capital of Himachal Pradesh. It is the largest exiled Tibetan community in Shimla. Sanjali Street runs through the city and passes by the entrance of the Tibetan area. Right across the street is the Sanjali bus station. This blessing of a convenient location has become a curse now that Shimla is an emerging tourist destination. If you look from the opposite hill, this Tibetan area is hidden by various buildings of Sanjali. The most visible building is a parking lot under construction next to the Tibetan area. According to the plan of the Shimla local government, this parking lot will continue to expand, and the entire Tibetan area must be relocated. In the past 5 years, the two sides have been deadlocked over whether to move or not to move the Tibetans, where to move them, and how to compensate them.
It's really on a strategic place. Shimla Municipal Corporation has been trying to evict them for a very long time, actually. And it is the fight between the municipal corporation and these maybe 60-70 families.
The water supply was thus cut off in the Tibetan community, and they were not allowed to repair their houses. Any hammering sounds were strictly prohibited.
심일부리니 제마 로리 뿌런 산당사 뿌려 꼬주래 티우도 가라 바지 잡상한데 잡상 걸리게 쇠 잡상 자미 니뭐 따고 따대 그래 니뭐 따고 천사 잡상 쇠지도 저러지도 근데 니뭐 따고 따대고 딱더라 또 근데 몸으로 원래 봐 답들이 지금 뭐 따, 지금 따진 지금 따데 김에절 기나죠 어디 폰탄이 요 커뮤니티 그래서 오면 구조도 좀 나가 키고 뭐 나가 키고 근데 빼도 자도 나가 소리게 때문에 pombo 지르는 누구 orada 얘니 가지고 다 국제는 다요 말다 건 가고 그래서 국제도 차통으로 써야 아무지 파이프 주고 필요해 파이프가 쉬운 거 필요해 그남 필요해 잡은 쇠니 샤셔래 파이프는 땅으로만 안 샤셔.
The report published by the Tibet Justice Center in 2016 investigated the land dispute in Sanjali. It was state land leased to the Tibetan community by the government of India for a term of 20 to 30 years, in which the term has expired. On August 19, 2010, an eviction order was sent to 125 Tibetan families living in Sanjali. Although the Shimla Municipal Corporation was also directed to propose a relocation of the Tibetan families, the state government did not provide the requisite funds for it.
My ideals towards the Tibetan people have changed drastically after Shimla. Look at these people, they are completely isolated and completely thrown away by the CTA. And then there's hundreds of them who was not promised, like what the Dalai Lama said, or like what the CTA is saying. They say, they're working very hard for the Tibetan people, everybody in the colony, and nobody's left behind. There's so many people that I saw was left behind.
공부 야구 자도다. 아니 파투지 모델이 두개 샘대 쇼랑도 아주. 내가 다와 두기 왜 준비해서 내가 유도야. 예, 내가 내가 벌리 다 강보 축수 내가 지금. 아무 나를 줘. 지금 가와도 Kashmir ko special ko ngol chibel labra.
Lo sum bimin cham.
Lo chim chaman. Tinde chiwe tarikh ate ta tum takta lo.
Ta lo tu kam chum lo sum shi abi dil shahir mara ta bache ta ti chimpu jante hostel bula khawa lu ge do ta shungla laire da.
Even where the Dalai Lama's residence is, in the site of the Central Tibet administration, Upper Dharamsala has also been involved in land disputes. As early as 2012, Upper Dharamsala has received an expulsion order from the Shimla High Court, requiring residents, institutions, and shops in the area to move out before March 31, 2013.
McLeodganj used to be a forest land. The government of India is very strict with forest land. Houses are demolished and they are kicked out from forest land. 210 families, if they are expelled, where would they go?
Although the eviction order was temporarily suppressed under the intervention of the Indian Ministry of Interior, land dispute was not resolved in Upper Dharamsala. According to an investigation conducted by the Tibet Justice Center, the Shimla government designated the area as forest land, even after decades of occupation and residence by the Tibetans, and at the same time continued to collect water and electricity fees as well as taxes from residents and institutions. What on earth caused expulsion order?
One Indian sued the Supreme Court of India, saying that all the rocks are painted by these advertisements from different companies. We are nailing the trees to put out the prayer flags. So there was a misunderstanding. I attended the meeting also, and I said, okay, if we don't nail, if we put the how do you say, the sellotapes, the tapes, will that be okay? We actually don't nail the trees. We just tie the prayer flags, means it comes on a strings, a long string.
The only reason I see all this happening is jealousy. Many people prefer, Tibetans. Many people sympathize with Tibetans. They're hired more from the Western people, and they're more appreciated by the Western people.
Some of the sources that I have over there said they would press for, let's say, soccer match between Tibetans and Ladakhis. And they say this is not a good sign. They are looking for an excuse to beat you up.
Some local politicians, they politicize, and India is anyway a huge, huge country with all kinds of people. Some are really poor, no basic facilities for them. Of course, I feel very sorry for them, but it is not because of us.
On the first day of school, Woeser Dawa was going to drive his children to the boarding school in Leh, that is, to report to the Tibetan Children's Village. But in the end, to avoid trouble, he stopped the car outside the city and walked the children to their school. In order to improve the relationship with the locals, the Tibetan Children's Village also accepts Indian students. And because it is located on the Sino-Indian border, it is also open to students in the Ngari prefecture of Tibet.
The population for the Tibetans arriving from Tibet, enrolling in TCV is decreasing. When we visited for our second research last year, we visited the refugee office in Leh, and we met one of the officers, and he said, last year there's only one child that came from Tibet.
Summer vacation has ended just like that. the melancholy from leaving home is quickly replaced by the excitement of seeing friends. Everyone must work hard for a bright future in the new semester. In the beginning of 2018, Japanese director Tomio Ota received news from Fixer in Leh that the only Tibetan student in the Tibetan children's village in Leh has dropped out and returned to Tibet to study.